I just heard him sort of lean over to his assistant, and he said, "Ask him if he knows how to play any Donny Hathaway." And I was like, and then they asked me, and I was like, "Yeah, I can play a song for you." And I just started playing, and man, he's sitting next to me, his shoulders next to mine. He's singing Donny Hathaway, man.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host David Holloway and I'm pumped as always to be here with you. I'm flying solo this episode. It is grand final weekend and my dear colleague Paul has another engagement unfortunately, but that hasn't stopped an amazing interview with Mr. Darryl Beaton. So I think whether you're an Australian-based keyboard player or like more than 70% of our listeners based overseas, I think you'll enjoy this interview with Darryl a great deal. Darryl is an amazing multi-instrumentalist, grew up with keyboards, has played on some amazing TV shows, played with some brilliant artists, some of which some artists you'll definitely know. And this is not a teaser to get you to watch till the end, but I'm very, very serious there, very close to the end. Darryl has the most amazing Stevie Wonder anecdote. So do hang around for that. But it's, an amazing career that we're very keen to speak to Darryl about. So I'll, leave it there and talk to you after the show. So, Darryl, welcome. We're here on a Saturday morning. You've just come in from the club, showing your true dedication, all-nighter, coming to the podcast. How are you, sir?
Yeah, man, just fresh. I haven't had any sleep. That's how. But gone are those days, my friend. I was in bed straight like half an hour after we finished our gig last night, and I'm well rested, up nice and early, ready to chat.
Well, let's talk about your gig last night. So you're currently on tour with the amazing Delta Goodrem. We might as well start off with that. So you were playing in Melbourne last night. How did the gig with Delta come about? Because you've been her MD for a while now, haven't you?
Yeah, I think we've done. This will be our fourth tour now, I think, from memory. It just came. She was looking for someone, and I'd already done some other Sony artists. So I guess I came up in the conversation, and then I met with her and we talked about her music, and we really clicked because I'm classically trained and love the influence of classical music. She's well down that track, and so we just talked about how we can mesh that into her sound more. And I still to this day I just love using that classical element in putting her shows together, and she's a lot of fun. So we really clicked. I love working with her. She's great.
No, I can imagine. And for our international listeners and viewers that aren't aware of Delta Goodrem, and a lot would be, but she's an amazing piano player in her own right, brilliant singer, has released, I've lost track, Darryl, but she must have at least half a dozen, if not 8 or 9 albums to her name.
Yep.
So amazing. So the gigs, your role there, obviously, I'm assuming Delta still plays a little bit live herself, like she sits behind the piano and so on, and then you're obviously
Very
accentuating that.
So, yeah, very much so. She, we've always got an acoustic piano front and center on the gigs. She plays most of the gig on the piano. She's a great player and great. She's always growing too. She's always trying to. She's still like a student, and I love that about her. She's not like she could realistically, because she's established, kind of sit on her on her established what she's already accomplished and not really grow. But she's always up for, hey Darryl, what can I play here? Let's what kind of complex classical thing can I put into this transition or this little section here? So she's she plays probably more than half of the gig, and then I'll cover a fair bit of it, and also I cover all the other auxiliary things, all the strings, she's got quite a lot of embellishment on her records, so I cover all that stuff.
Well, again, I wasn't planning on jumping in here, but let's talk about your rig for that, because I can imagine, knowing a lot of Delta's back catalogue, there's huge diversity there. So I'm assuming, you're covering a lot of different sounds. I'm assuming you might have some accentuating backing tracks on main stage or whatever it is, driven stuff. How's it set up?
It's kind of changed for this run. I've really streamlined my rig down to one called Chronos 88, and I've discovered the karma switching. So I've been able to kind of really get around the instrument and utilize its fullest potential, which is, I should have done this a long time ago. It would have saved me a lot of lugging, and it would save my back. But usually I'll take out at least, I've taken out the 2 Chronos, and I'll take like an analog board. Usually they're called Prologue. You know, for transparency, I'm endorsed by Korg, so I bring out most of their gear. So I'll have something that really, is set up for organic instruments. So I know that that's where I go to when I'm playing those parts. So I'll have a kind of complex string patch that has kind of great layering, so I can play soft and velocity sensitive sort of stuff. And then I'll have, I call it the bread and butter board, which is the bottom board. It's covering all pianos and really fundamental stuff down the bottom, which is, I think most people kind of do that kind of setup. But for this rig, 1 keyboard, man, it's been great.
Wow. And nothing, so no soft synths. That's great. That's nice and robust.
Yeah, I had a main stage set up ready to go, and it was just going to be complex to set up, and I really like the idea of having a one-stop shop.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to, some things are over here, some things are over here, and it also means I can work offline. So even today, I'm working like with the Chronos editor in the hotel room, changing my set list and all that kind of stuff. And then when I get to the gig, I just upload it straight into there. I like the idea of constantly being able to improve. Even in mid-tour, I like making incremental improvements if I can, just to make things run better and better. Yeah, I'm a little bit OCD about that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I suppose from a redundancy viewpoint, you're backlighting the Chronos at each gig, so that sort of covers that, doesn't it?
Exactly. So I walk on with a USB stick. We do have a backup Chronos there that travels with us as well, but just the fact that, and I've always done this because of when we started doing a lot of festivals with Mauboy, Jess Mauboy, we only had like 10, 15-minute changeovers. So getting on, making sure, main stage has got a USB connection, and then troubleshooting stuff just wasn't fun. So I built everything in the Chronos, and it covers it. It covers it well, and I feel safe,
Yeah.
I think that was more important than having, a plethora of different access to different sounds, and that took priority.
Agree totally. So and we're definitely going to get on to Jess in a big way. Let's go back though to your musical upbringing, and I know you've been interviewed before. Both your mum and dad were great musicians. So tell us about your upbringing and the wonderful Mrs Parsons, your piano teacher.
Oh wow! How did you hear? That's fantastic. I love that you know who she is. Okay, so my dad, he's passed, but he was a drummer, very well respected in where I grew up. I grew up country. I'm from Tasmania. So I kind of just followed him around everywhere and just saw how he did things, and he looked like he was having a lot of fun, was the bottom line. I saw that he was kind of hanging out with friends and he was making money, and he always had a smile on his face when he was playing. So I think I made the connection early that music looks like a good thing to do in life. You know what I'm saying? And so I spent a lot of time with my dad in bands, but also in he was kind of military trained drummer, so he was in brass bands and in wind symphonies and things like that. So I used to so that we could be together. I'd join those groups too, which and read whatever classical and arrangements together. And then my mum was a singer. Well, she still is a singer, to be fair. So I think that's kind of where I've got my grounding in how to play with the singer and how to give a vocalist the right support and to make them feel safe, but also some interplay and stuff like that. I always say, like, there's nothing like playing with your mum as in terms of pressure. Like sometimes people ask me, what's it like playing with some of these big female artists? And there's nothing more gives you more anxiety than playing with your mum. Because if you make a mistake, you're going to hear about that for a month for every day for a month after you make that mistake. So that was a good grounding. Yeah, playing with a singer from very young made it was good. Good.
So, how did you move, Darryl, from loving it at school, seeing your dad's passion for it, to making a full time career out of it? Particularly understanding, I know you had some really hard times. I mean, feel free to tell us about sleeping in corridors and all that sort of stuff. It took quite a battle for you to get there.
And you've really done your research. Um, yeah. So I moved to Sydney. Um, and I just bought a keyboard and $50 because I was picked up from doing a sight reading gig at the casino down in Tasmania, and I thought I was moving up to the big time. This artist had said to me, "Do you want to move to Sydney? You can work for me. I'll take care of you." And I'm thinking like, okay, I was telling all my crew, I'm like, "I've made it, guys. See you later." I thought I was pretty flash. So, but when I moved up here, it turned out I was living in Redfern at the time. It was a pretty hard area. Yes, I slept in a hallway. I had to kind of pack down my bed every day. Um, Look, it wasn't even near glamorous. I had to carry my keyboard up and down 15 flights of stairs to go and do gigs, and I was too proud really to go home. Well, I honestly thought about it. I thought, man, this sucks. I really, really could just do with going home, man, and hanging out with my friends and going and getting some of mum's cooking. But yeah, I stuck it out, and for the first couple of years, I was just making friends, making musical friends, playing wherever I could with anybody who'd listen to me. Um, and then I just started to make those connections, and it was, I got really lucky with some great mentors, in Sydney. I really was blessed to hang out with some of the people who just went, okay, they can see something in this kid, and they invested some time. They gave me chances to play, and I made sure that everything I did was of a standard that they would be happy with and proud of. Right?
Yeah,
Um,
and that, yeah, great perspective. And were you? Am I correct, Darryl, that your initial work there was in the production side of things, as far as studio work, or
no, I came up as a player, so I mean,
okay,
yeah, so the initial sell was that I'd be a musical director. So straight away, I was going to be a musical director of this artist that I came up to work with. Um, and I did, for all intents and purposes. I did the job. I kind of kept my word, put the show together, worked the band, did all the arrangements, and fulfilled the obligation. Um, but after that, I was just looking for anything else, and I fell into a bunch of great gigs with some great players.
that's yeah, and so that's where you sort of develop the networks, and so when do you feel like you were hitting your stride, where you go, okay, I've got this. I know as musicians, quite often we never feel like we've got this, and that
I was going
you're
to say, I'm
never
still waiting for
totally
that to
sure of where
happen,
the
my
next.
friend.
Yeah, yeah. So
Still waiting for that to
I
happen.
suppose where you felt like I'm sort of on the right track here. I know somewhat that I can make a living out of this. When did that sort of hit you?
Yeah, one of my first sort of solid regular gigs was with a boy group, Australian boy group called Human Nature, and that's when it started to feel like, oh, okay, there's a level where this can be all you do, and it's of a level financially that I don't have to do much else. Because when I first came up, I was working in a music store, and well, I was supposed to be a salesman, but all my friends from back then say I was the worst salesman they've ever seen because I couldn't, I hated imposing on people. I was the worst salesman. So they
Yeah.
used to just get me to play the instruments and shut up. So they'd say, just don't
Which
talk.
music store was it, Daryl?
I worked at a few. I worked at a place called Venue Music, then
Oh
Allen's,
yeah,
which
wow, I
became
remember venue.
Brash's. Yeah, man. I worked them all because it was a way of supplementing income in the beginning. So I didn't know, I hadn't plugged into what was going on. So um, I did those jobs, but I was bad at it. And you know what? It's probably good that I was bad at it because it made me want to get out of it. Made some great friends, but that life I was terrible. I was awful. I never sold anything. they'd be looking at my monthly sales and they'd be going, "What are you doing here?" So they'd say, I was a great demoer. So, I mean, I did a lot of practice. That was good. I just sat on all the synths and stuff and had a good time while everybody else, gravitated around me and scalped all the sales while I'm playing.
That's funny. And so, human nature, again, for our international listeners, and I don't think I'm overstaying the case here, Darryl, were, from an Australian perspective, the equivalent of Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. They were hugely popular in Australia and, great outfit to work with, I imagine.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. I mean, they're successful in our country, and I still did a tour with them last year. I did like 95 dates with them last year. The takeaway from that for me was like their professionalism is probably second to none. That the hardest working men in show business, and they literally, even now, they're well into their 40s. They've been in Vegas now for a long time. When we come back and we do things here, they rehearse as hard as like when they were in their 20s. So that to me was inspirational. It was like, oh yeah, this is the level that we should all be measuring ourselves by. I mean, because we'd always looked at the Americans and looked at big budgets, long 2-month, 3-month rehearsals, and we'd be measuring ourselves by that. But in Australia, we don't get that. We get the most time rehearsing I've ever had is a couple of weeks. So we have to work harder, faster, and more accurately to get the same kind of product, because we're always, I've always been measuring myself by international standards. And we're like the little guy that could, we get things done with less.
No, absolutely. And speaking of work ethic, I know in around 2007 you had an amazing recording session with Kanye West. And look, I'm like half the world's population have all sorts of stereotypes about Kanye, but you've made the comment before that you were absolutely blown away by his work ethic. Just tell us a little bit about that session and what you observed there.
Was it like a 3-day job? And it was just like a freestyle creative writing session in a Studio 301 in Sydney. And I'd never seen somebody sit at the console, at the board, for as long. He didn't leave. I'm sure he went to the bathroom at some point, but I didn't see it. The guy was sweating over the board. And again, it's that thing. Well, this guy doesn't need to work this hard. He's multi-millionaire. Got everything, but it's just in him. He needs to be doing something. And it wasn't just that he was working hard on the music that we were making and ideas. He was working on obviously the recording that we're doing. He was working on talking to the guy that was doing his biography, and then he had another guy there that was doing his clothing line. So he's doing 3, 4, sometimes 5 things at once. And I was looking at this going, "Man, you're a machine." So, I mean, any preconceived ideas I had of the guy were like, well, I've got to give you at least, you work harder than everybody else. That's why you are where you are, is because you put in, you're sweating it. So I've got to give the guy the big respect for seeing that.
Yeah,
and I learned a lot about it and took it away and tried to implement that into how I work and how I, try to carry other people in rehearsals and in pre-production and all that kind of stuff. I like working hard. I like working intensely. It's good.
And I can't imagine as a musician, there are a lot of areas where you work more harder than the area you're working in, which is, what I want to try and do is weave in the TV work with some of the other amazing artists you've worked with. So tell us about how, you've mentioned the human nature relationship there. How did you end up getting involved with TV work?
TV kind of, well, I was already doing little hits with the Sony artists I was working with. I was doing, early on I was doing Human Nature, I was doing Stan Walker, and then the Guy Sebastian gig came along. So I was already doing a lot of TV hits just by, just through working with the artists. And so I'd been spending a lot of time in the studios, like, Channel 7 in particular. We did a lot of work in there. So I'd built these relationships, and then the first sort of regular TV gig I was doing, our TV network, Channel 7, wanted a house band, like a Fallon style thing where we play in, play out of ads and just work with the hosts. So we did that for like, I think a year and a half or something like that. Very early mornings, had to be on set 4:30. We were learning. We'd get the kind of topic matter at 4:30, and we'd have to kind of customize our playlist on the spot. So and also like accidental sort of stings and stuff if that came up in with the host. And there was a great host who was pretty spontaneous. He'd get us to play things. So there was a lot of stuff that happened very quickly, with no opportunity for preparation. So that was a very intense gig. Luckily, I had some of the best players in the country there, and we were able to move fast. I could call songs on the talkback mic, and we'd be able to play them, call a key, count them in, and they're all over it. So that was the first instance of doing that kind of TV work. And then a great friend of mine, he's another music director called Darryl West, who's from down in Melbourne, got me for a few things like Dancing with the Stars. And he's also the guy who's got me for Australian Idol. And so, yeah, it kind of just happened. One of those things, just made the connection, just got into TV. You learn how that's a whole different beast. Learning how to operate, to work in TV is a very special thing. Like, I try to explain to people what it's like having, so in these gigs we have the in-ear monitors. I've got the director in one ear, I've got the host in another. I'm talking to the band, I'm trying to play. So there's like literally 4 or 5 things. I'm trying to find sounds and patches. It's so intense. It's so intense. But you know what? I actually got addicted to it after a while. It was other gigs seemed like a bit slow after a while. I mean, I really love hearing the director go, "Hey, play something to do with race cars," and you guys got to kind of pull something straight out. And I love it. It's it's pretty addictive.
Yeah, rightfully so. And I think it's a testament to your skills, Darryl, because my guess is, obviously not knowing that much about those MD roles on the music talent shows, and calling them music talent shows is underrating what they are, because they're so much more than that. But I imagine either you burn out, you love it, or you don't last long if you don't have the chops. So the fact that you've been doing it after all these years, I mean, there's no doubt you've got the chops and you love it. So I think, that's a great outcome.
Yeah, it's very satisfying when you're able to think on your feet and get something done. I also like the TV thing because it's almost like, it is. It's immortalized forever. The pressure is high because everything's going out to a big audience. It's recorded. It's not a gig. I enjoy doing hits in pubs and playing with friends. It's a different mentality, but I also love the discipline of, having to be a bit of a sniper, get in there, get it right, kill it. It's very satisfying when you nail it. So, yeah, I like that.
No,
good fun.
Absolutely. And so if you don't mind, Darryl, do you want to run us through, and I understand to a large extent there won't be a typical day, let's use Australian Idol as the example, but for a typical recording day, I suppose, is the best way to do it. What's your day end to end roughly like? Again, understanding it does vary.
So on a typical day in Idol would be, it's like an 8 a.m. start, quite early. And we would prep, depending on how many artists there are. Usually early on in the season, there's a lot, so we've got a lot of music to get through. So Dorian, who's the MD on that one, is got a good team together. So I was doing arrangements and chart writing on that gig, and he has a team of programmers and backing vocals and everything. So we are literally rehearsing some songs. We've got people preparing the playback if there are any changes and that kind of thing. And then so at 8 o'clock we start rehearsals. We might rehearse till midday. Then afternoon they'll do camera runs. So we're playing the music again to so get all the visuals and camera moves that they want, and then usually there'll be if it's live to air, we'll go to live to air in that evening. But on the Idol gig, so we might shoot till 9, 10 at night. So it's quite a long day, 12, 14-hour days. And then I'd have to go home and prep, so write charts for the next day. That was only a 2.5 month period. We were probably only getting about 3, maybe 4 hours sleep a night.
Yeah.
Which is, it's hard to sustain that for a long time, but mainly because, we, especially Dorian and I and a few other people, had dual roles. So I wasn't just playing keys and guitar on that gig. It was okay, that job's finished, go home and get everything ready for the band. The band wants to see charts too. I mean, they want to see charts before they head in. Mind you, the guys on that gig, they can all sight read pretty incredibly well. So that's we rely on that being the fact, because there's a lot of moving parts to these shows. So there's a lot of changes, last minute additions, key changes, all that kind of business. It happens on the fly, and you've just got to be there. So I literally have, on Idol, I've got like 6 keyboards, but I've also got a station which is set up with my chart writing. I'm sending out refreshed charts with any changes and key changes, whatever, on the fly, while I'm trying to still play the parts for rehearsals. But I'm leaning over, I'm on the laptop trying to get that done. You know what I mean? It's that's an intense TV experience. Again, it's like what I was speaking to before. In Australia, we tend to we work harder. Not like I've got friends who play in other countries on the same show, on Idol and those sorts of things, and they have specific people doing one job each. So, but because we don't have that, we don't have the budget necessarily. Everyone's got to just take extra roles and get it done. I think that might be why Australians in general have a pretty good reputation overseas, because we don't whinge for a start, and then we just get things done even in the face of adversity. So I think that's a good reputation to have most of the time.
It absolutely is. And you're absolutely correct overseas. And I mean, as you know, in the US, the union regulations about who does what are so rigid. There's no way a US TV show could do what you do here. It would shut down the show.
Yeah, this is true.
It's interesting setup. So let's just briefly delve into the stereotypes around these sort of shows. I mean, right back to Rockstar in Excess, I just love to bits, and I always try and check out, Australian Idol and so on as they go, because you get some incredible players. There's still that stereotype that I think is less prevalent, but is still there, as far as it's so commodified and plastic, and you're not getting the real stars out of it that maybe would have just come to the surface otherwise in times past. Now, I couldn't disagree more with that perspective from the talent viewpoint. So you've just mentioned, again, for our international listeners, some will be aware of Guy Sebastian, Delta Goodrem, Jess Mauboy. Now they've all, and Stan Walker, they've all come out of these shows. I'm just interested in any rebuttal you want to make on those stereotypes to this day, just how much talent is involved from those guys to pull off what they do.
Look, I'm aware that that's what some of the conversation is around these TV shows, that it's all fake and it's all just for TV. And look, there is an element of the backstory and drama. Of course, that's entertainment. You have to understand that that's part of it, but it's important also to see these artists in context, or and maybe even see where they came from. And obviously my most comprehensive experience of one of these artists is Jessica Mauboy, and she'd already won Telstra the Road to Tamworth. But by the time she was like 13 or 14, she was an established country artist, like, before she became this sort of our pop icon. So it's no mistake. Like when you in that level of talent, it can't stay suppressed, and it's always going to manifest itself somewhere, and it may as well be a TV show that gives her fantastic exposure. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that if she'd never gone on Australian Idol and never been successful there, we'd still be listening to her, and she'd be at the level where she's at. So I think it's important to view these things in context. And same with Guy. I mean, Guy, what a ridiculous singer. I mean, that's world class. Like, so, it's always going to rise. That was always going to rise to the surface. So, yes, look, to be fair, there's a bunch of that fluffy stuff that goes on in TV to make it more interesting for the average person to watch. When there's an interesting backstory, they're going to be invested in it. But some of the like the people who tend to at least last a long time, like these artists we just mentioned, it's no mistake. They were always going to be part of our musical conversation in this country. So, yeah, I just think, Dave, I think it's context. I think,
it is.
Don't judge. Learn the context and then establish whether they were just come from nowhere, but most of the time they'd already had runs on the board and were ready to go.
That's right. And my guess, and it's only a guess, Darryl, and I don't even expect you to confirm or deny this, but my guess is that there are some incredibly talented singers that go through the audition processes that may not make it to the end. They may even be as equally good as those that make it that do make it through. But the difference is that the stories, and you've mentioned the drama, that you have to have in a TV show are more resonant with those that make through. So Jess's story is amazing. Guy's, story is amazing. And quite rightly, they rise to the top on both their talent and their story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a combination. Some fantastic things. Like often I'm working on when we're working on the show, we kind of have guesses at who we think is going to win and who is like. But as musicians, we listen to them and go, man, they can sing. We say sang. They are sang, and so as much as I think they're musically incredible, they won't necessarily make it because, like you said, there's no backstory, or maybe they don't interview well, or there's some other element that's non-musical that means that they're not going to be appealing to the public, because at the end of the day, it's a competition and it's assessed by votes. So as much as I think, wow, this person can sing and they've been an incredible artist, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get through. I'm often wrong. Yeah.
No, that's great. And so let's talk about Jess Mauboy. Actually, I don't want to try and explain how iconic Jess is in a local sense and in a large extent an international sense. I probably get you to explain just what you see her role is in music, both in the Australian and international context, and then your role with her.
I can only speak to, look, I think it's important to say, as an Indigenous artist, the influence she has on Indigenous community in general just can't be discounted. We often do things way out in the desert. We do a lot of gigs off way out in remote communities and stuff. And so when we go out there, and I'm just witness to these kids that can just see themselves in her, it's so inspiring. I'm finding it hard to find words when you just see little kids that probably, I don't know, that we need more of these icons. Obviously we need more of this influence in culture generally, and it's got everything to do not just the way she sings. She's an ambassador for literacy, for all these other important elements, and just that the kids look at her and they go, oh, okay, I can do that. I can see myself doing that and becoming that. And if not a singer, I can see myself doing wherever it is I want to do. So being part of that brand and mechanism that has that kind of profound influence on a whole sector of our country is something I'm really proud of. And I've been with her a long time, partly for that reason. I believe in what it is we do through her music, yeah, it feels good to be part of something that's bigger than all of us. You know, if that makes any sense. Yeah,
And
yeah,
so in your role, Darryl, obviously you're musical
mm,
director for Jess, aren't you?
yeah, yeah. So my look, my role with her is broader than with most artists. So we any gig we put together, I put together all the arrangements, put the band together, rehearse the band. When we do smaller gigs, I'll play guitar with her. We also we work on original music together. We kind of talk about most of her musical needs, but also I'm lucky that we've actually become really good friends. She'll come to my house, hang out with my family. She'll come out, her husband will take my kids out for the day. Do you know what I'm saying?
That's great.
It's grown into something, and this is testimony to what kind of a person she is. She is an incredible human. So I can't speak highly enough of her. She's my kind of people. She's proven herself again and again and again to be a great and loyal friend, and trustworthy, a straight shooter. Do you know what I'm saying? All the good things. So
Yeah.
for that to be something that the general public also gets. I mean, I've never heard anybody say anything bad about her. Normally you might hear something, you know, something a little bit cheeky or whatever, but no. I mean, she's a good energy. She's good for this country, and I'm really proud to be part of it. So my role is just supportive. As a MD, do everything I can in anything in creation of her music, but also as a friend. I'm there anytime things, we have faced challenges in terms of what her expectations are as an indigenous artist. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm there as supportive too. Just remind her why we're here, why are we doing this.
Yeah, and that's an incredibly important role. And then on top of that, you've obviously got the technical side as MD as well. So, I mean, Jess's output over the years is quite diverse as well. So, I mean, how do you approach it? She's an amazing live act, and in your terminology, to say she sang is an understatement. Um, yeah, how do you make that work live? Again, you got a similar setup to what you do with Delta, or it's quite different because I mean, Jess has a lot of really great pop stuff as well.
Yeah, so we've got to cover a lot of ground with that because she's got, like you said, everything from like real straight ahead, pretty high energy pop music, right back to she's released acoustic tracks, So we do cover a lot of ground. So I like to keep things pretty mobile because she also likes to move around a lot. I've got to keep I've got to keep my eye on her as an MD a lot. She moves around a lot. She likes to change up things. She likes to keep us on our toes. So some things we'll do on playback. Sometimes we'll jump off playback to play with her. I don't have a lot on playback with her.
No.
Um, because the band is, first of all, the band is killing. We've got some
Mm.
of the best players in the country, um, playing our music. So it sounds big enough that we don't really need too much support, and that's fun. So I keep things very fluid so that we can follow her. So I'm constantly calling the shots when she's changing things up. She's a little bit
Yeah.
mischievous like that. She likes to surprise us. Uh, you know, pull songs out of nowhere, change arrangements when she's ready. It's good. Again, like it's almost like that excitement I get from TV. It's like you have to be on your toes, you have to be paying attention. And again, it goes back to following my mum as a singer. Like I am tuned in. I think that's the only thing that I have that is remotely special because I'm not the best keys player in the world and I'm not the best guitarist in the world. But the only thing I can do is follow a singer and make them feel like they can do what they want to do and they can be adventurous and they can be bold. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great perspective, and that's probably a great segue, Daryl, to any particularly amusing or substantial train wrecks you've had on stage. No matter the artist, doesn't matter who the artist, or it can be on Idol or whatever. One that really stands out for you.
We were opening for Chris Brown and the pop artist with Jess and we for some reason I think we tried a new console. So it was digital when digital was just starting to run in, and everybody's really excited about using. We've been off analog desks, and for some reason, well, we were running playback from front of house because it was a quick changeover. Now another one of those kind of when you're opening for a big act, you don't get a lot of time. So we'd done that, and for some reason, the click out of apart from the playback had a delay of nearly like half a second. So we're getting the playback, but then the click is like throwing us off. So everyone in the band, I made a calls like, okay, this is not happening right. Play. We had to play in front of the beat by about half a second just to try to keep rolling and get through the gig. It was disastrous. We were destroyed, trying to, just, I mean, it's such a counterintuitive thing to play off the click. And so, to our credit, we kind of did it. Everybody was distraught after. It was a lot of trauma. Needless to say, we reinvented how we were going to do things for the next gigs. But that was pretty horrible.
Yeah, that's a great example. I've done a little bit of playing to click, and that just horrifies me. That just that's not good.
Yeah, it was not fun.
And I also don't want to miss out on covering your own solo work. So tell us about, and as much as say you may not be one of the best keys players in the world, I tend to disagree with that. I'd say you'd be in the top 10 percentile without trying. But tell us about your own work, and you've also got an amazing singing voice, and you like sort of the funky sort of music in your own work. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I kind of fell into being an artist, a while back, mainly because I couldn't find anyone to sing the songs that I was writing. I've always loved writing, like I started love singers. Probably, my mum being the first one I fell in love with. So I've always wanted to write songs for that reason, because I love singing. I love the voice. I love how it makes me feel. But I couldn't find anybody to sing the songs I was writing. So my friends at the time, who were these incredible Chilean musicians, the Martinez family, guys by the name of Dauno Martinez, Andro Martinez, Phoenix Martinez, they said, well, just sing it. You just sing it. And I was like, oh, man, come on. I know too many good singers to want to try and do that. It's embarrassing. I'll just make a fool of myself. What will people think? Anyway, they kind of convinced me, and I did it. So we put the band together. So we revisited all the songs I'd written. And so like there was, my influence, which is it was R&B, soul, gospel kind of oriented, and that's how the songs, the sort of genesis of the songs were. And then these incredible Latin influenced musicians come and put their heat on it, and the collision was a beautiful thing. So we rearranged all the songs, and it was very musical in that we were I don't know, we had some things to say musically. Let's just put it that way. And so it was quite complex. But I still think I'm still very proud of the work that we made. I've gone in really hard on the stories and messages that I wanted to share. At the time, I'd written a bunch of songs when I got back from West Africa. I lived there for a little while, and I just had a profound experience over there that essentially changed my life, and wanted to tell people about it, and that being exposed to Latin music too through these guys was just something that I feel very blessed for, and grateful. They're still great friends today. So that whole experience was good. I mean, I grew into the idea of being a front person. Eventually, kind of almost got comfortable with it, and I think it helped. What I do now, what I do as a job is, being the front person for a while, and then playing the supportive role. It gave me a great sympathy for what they're going through up the front there, how they feel, how much more important it is to make them feel comfortable and supported up the front there, and my instinct now is how would I like to feel when I'm up there singing that song? And so it informed what I do as a job. So it was a great time. You know,
Yeah.
we did like
No,
8 or 9 tours of Japan. Had the best time, man. Had the greatest time.
I'd love to take a sidestep into Japan, but I probably won't due to time. But I can't let you get away without, you said, the profound experience in West Africa. And even if you don't feel comfortable talking about if there was a specific experience, but just what you learnt musically immersed in another culture like that.
It just it gave me look. Okay, there's a lot of life lessons there. Not even non-musical. I went there pretty green. I'd never really been out of Australia that much. Maybe a couple of little trips to Bali or whatever. You know, nothing much. And I went there with a certain mindset and just learnt that the people there knew how to live life properly. They were living, well, I mean, what do we say now? They're living their best life, and it had a profound effect that I just wanted to understand what that meant. Um, and then, you know, the musical context too, like where does all the music that we know, where does it come from? It comes from there. I could hear every album that I'd kind of listened to growing up. I could hear the roots of it in what was being played in the area, and the reasons behind playing the music, the motivations for playing that kind of music. It just put music in context. I could understand the root of the music that I was trying to learn and and play and share. And so, I mean, that's a very short version of what happened, but
No, that's
um, yeah, it profoundly changed the reason I play music, my motivation for playing music. The I think it informed kind of um, the the just the context for wanting to play music. I mean, is for bringing joy to people, for your own therapy, you know, for you know, celebration. You know, I mean, a lot of the times as musicians, we're very heady about our music. You know, we're very egotistical. You know, but that's not what music's about. Music's about sharing, making people feel good. You know, celebrating, or for ritual, or for whatever it might be. There's usually a deeper meaning behind most of the music that we've learnt to play or be part of. So yeah, it was a big deal, and I'm grateful for that experience, man.
Yeah, superb perspective too. I can only imagine, and that probably links you to you just spoke about sharing. So, although you're still very much in the middle of your own career, is there any advice you'd give someone, you know, just starting out, sort of, you know, 17, 18, 19, want to do a similar trajectory to you, just, you know, a broad, diverse, you know, work with a broad range of acts or possibly TV or whatever? Is it possible for you to give any advice, knowing how much the landscape has changed?
Yeah, I mean, some things that don't necessarily change. Yes, like yeah, the landscape is constantly going to change, but yeah, we touched on things like work ethic. If you turn up and work harder than everybody else, and maybe we even touched on it with the artists, that they were, in the context is they had already done the work. So um, be prepared every time you turn up. You know, like be professional. I mean, these are the basics, Dave. You know what I mean? Like, um, uh, other things like make sure you get the money right too. You know, like if you want to make this a career, if you want to make this permanent, make sure you get the money right. Don't play with money. Know your value is the underlying message, I would say. So if you want to make a career, that has to be part of your conversation. So you not only do you be prepared, you know, practiced, be accomplished musically. You got to be a businessman. You got to navigate your way around, you know, the record labels and the TV execs. So get comfortable with having those conversations and know your value, because musicians, I mean, I feel like a fair portion of them are very uncomfortable having those conversations. Because as artists, we don't like to do that, but it should just be done.
Yeah.
It should be something that's normal to be able to get what you're worth. So yeah, it's just mainly preparation, man. Mainly, and be really
Mm.
professionalism. This is what I got from those early
Yeah.
mentors. Is I saw that they knew the music before they rehearsed. It's not like you don't come to the rehearsal learning the music or asking what chord is that, blah blah blah. No, man, no. The rehearsal is for embellishing what is already established, right? It's not for me teaching you what the chords are. So that's
No,
definitely how I
that's
run
right.
rehearsals now. It's like don't turn up, don't ask me what the chord is. you know,
Yeah.
yeah, that won't
No.
last long. Yeah.
No, exactly. No, brilliant guidance, Darryl. That's brilliant. And we'll launch into some of our standard questions. So, again, for our international listeners, Darryl needs to catch a flight because in Australia, touring is an interesting beast in that you played last night in Melbourne, Darryl, and you're playing tonight in Adelaide, and that's 800 kilometres away. So, it makes for
Yeah.
an interesting touring schedule, but it's
Yeah, I
totally
know. It's
normal
so
in
weird.
Australia.
Yeah. In the States, we'd probably
So,
do 5 gigs between now and between here and LA, but we've got to go halfway around the world to do another one. Yeah.
that's right. And so I just want to ask you to tag a keyboard player. Is there a keyboard player you've admired that you would love to hear more about their life story that you may not have a full awareness of?
Well, I'm a massive fan of Kenny Kirkland, but he's passed. But
Oh, yeah.
living, I'd probably say someone like PJ Morton. Do you know this guy?
Ah, yeah.
PJ Morton plays with Maroon 5, and he does his own solo thing. He's an incredible player.
Great
I
pick.
think his breadth of knowledge is pretty fierce. So I think he'd be an interesting guy to learn about.
Great
Yeah,
pick.
that would be my answer.
Oh, excellent. And then the dreaded Desert Island Discs question, Darryl. So 5
Mm.
albums that if you had to take them to a desert island, what would they be?
The first one I'd say would be Innovisions, Stevie Wonder.
Great.
That was a great album. It was like where jazz and funk collided, and he kind of started using technology. It was just an incredible album. So definitely that one. The two, I'd probably take the Bring On the Night live album with Sting. Jazz heavyweights like playing pop music, and you can kind of hear their colours in it. That to me was like such an interesting concept. You got Branford Marsalis and Kenny Kirkland, just who are
Yeah.
were arguably the best jazz players alive at the time, and but playing Sting's amazing song. So that was take that. Can't go past Donny Hathaway live at the Troubadour Bitter End. That is a cornerstone of if you're going to play R&B or soul music. It's that album's a
Yeah.
must. I'll have 2 number 3s if that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
George Benson, Weekend in
Oh,
LA.
yeah.
That would be up there. I have to have a number 4. Let's do a gospel album. So Smokey Norfolk is a gospel album. So I love probably How I Got Over, the live album. Yep.
And just to challenge you, Darryl, for your fifth slash sixth one, you've got to pick an Australian album just to help promote Australia to the world. What would you have to come up with if one of them had to be Australian?
See, I'm a Farnham fan, so I think I'd probably go John Farnham, Age of Reason, or John Farnham, Whispering Jack. I also love Ian Moss's solo work. What's that, Matchbook?
Yeah.
And you can't go past some Cold Chisel. So I think I've just named like 4 or 5 on number 5.
Yeah, that's
sorry.
okay, but they're all very good ones. Yeah.
Back me into a corner there, brother. There's so much good Australian music. So I think it's great that you're pointing people in that direction. There's some great artists here worth checking out for sure.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely link to all of you. You might get about 9 in your top 5 there by the sound of that. That's great.
Blown out the budget, sorry.
That's right. And our last question, so to speak, is the quick fire 10. So 10 short and sharp answers. First keyboard you ever owned?
First keyboard was an Ensoniq ESQ1.
Oh, nice. That's
my
a great
parents bought me
first
for
board.
my 17th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You can tell your parents were musicians. That's brilliant.
Yeah, they knew what time it
was. Most important pre-gig ritual for you?
A nap or meditation.
Yeah.
I bring...
Both good.
I like hiking, so I bring an ultralight blow-up mattress. and a pillow. And so, and I actually, for festivals, I bring a hammock. And if I can find somewhere to have a
Great.
pre-gig nap, that's going to happen.
That's brilliant. I love that. Theatres, arenas, stadiums. What do you like playing with, or TV studios? What sort of venue do you like best?
Oh man, everybody loves stadiums, man. There's something about a big crowd just loving on you. I mean, that's kind of the dream when we're kids, but some of my favorite gigs have actually been really small venues, to be honest, because seeing people's faces is beautiful. Seeing the reaction, the interaction, you don't get that in a stadium. So it's like, can I have both? Can I have
that's right.
stadium
You
and
can
a
have
sweaty
both.
club?
Yeah, beautiful. Transpose button or adjust on the fly?
No transpose button. Well,
No,
we think in
assume not.
numbers. We think in numbers. So, you should be able to, transpose pretty easily.
Yeah, no, gotcha. Favorite
Yeah.
gig you've ever done, if that's possible?
Well, we talked about Tokyo before. The level of appreciation and passion for music over there is pretty incredible. And that's a small club gig. Usually, some of the ones we're doing there, they're just so invested and they love on you so much even when you're doing something that they've never heard before. That to me is beautiful. So we've done a bunch of gigs in Tokyo. Trying to remember some of the names of the clubs, but Tokyo's been some of my favorite. That was with my solo project. Firefight was the one I've done with artists that it was 90,000 people in a stadium raising money for charity. So that was very satisfying. Yeah,
great. And I think you've answered the next question. Favorite city you've ever played? Tokyo, possibly.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
That's cool.
My favorite gig, this kind of a non-gig, is I got to play "Song for You" by Donny Hathaway with Stevie Wonder. He was in town, and I got to sit. He came into the club where I was playing with my trio.
Oh wow!
And I saw his daughter walk in, and I recognised her because I'm a massive Stevie Wonder fan, clearly.
Yeah.
So I started playing Chaka Khan's "Through the Fire" because I know there's not a female singer on the planet who doesn't love that song. So she just lit up. She came up and started singing. And then his drummer jumped on. So it was this
wow,
roll-on effect. And then I felt someone sit on the piano stool next to me, and I just heard him sort of lean over to his assistant, and he said, "Ask him if he knows how to play any Donny Hathaway." And I was like, and then they asked me, and I was like, "Yeah, I can play "Song for You." And I just started playing. And man, he's sitting next to me, his shoulders next to mine. He's singing Donny Hathaway, man. So okay, that's my favorite gig. You might have to do some editing there.
No, I think that's one of the best favourite gig anecdotes ever. I would never have washed that shoulder and probably bought the piano. That's brilliant.
That's what it felt like, man.
And so, name an artist you've not worked with that you'd like to work with.
I'd probably circle back to Sting. I mean, I've been a fan of lyrically his work for a very long time. Forget the music is fantastic too, but just his writing ability is sensational, and he also gives room for his musicians to get pretty wild. I like that. Yeah. So that would be a great gig. More recent artists, maybe Moses Sumney. He's a new guy, or Kim Burrell on the gospel front. That would be a dream.
No, excellent. Favorite music documentary or movie from any era? Just one that you'll go back to and watch now.
That was on my island, desert island. The Bring on the Night documentary kind of changed everything. Yep. They're just the behind the scenes, seeing how they rehearse, just the creative process, and just the playing on that. It just hit the right spot. And I mentioned before, a huge Kenny Kirkland fan. I just love that he, I mean, clearly an immense giant in the jazz world, but his energy, like he could come with really high energy playing, and that to me was super appealing. I really loved that.
No, good pick. Last two. Name one thing you'd like to see invented as a keyboard player that'd make your life easier.
Better keyboard stands. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I've seen some things come out that are like these things that fold up and they got wheels on the bottom and you can carry your keyboard on. That kind of like that seems to be a progression. Well, as a keyboard player, would make my life easier. So something like that would make sense.
Yeah. No, that's a good
Um,
answer.
yeah, I think a lot of
No,
dudes would appreciate that.
yeah, no, absolutely. And then your favourite non-musical activity or hobby, what keeps you sane outside of your busy musical schedule?
I'm a dad of 4 kids.
Yeah.
Proud dad of 4 kids, so that takes up a lot of time.
Mm.
I'm big on. I love hiking. I love because I grew up in Tasmania. I used to be in the wilderness all the time. It was normal for me to go, walking in the Midlands every weekend. So I do that with my kids. That's my non-music related reset. Try not to think
Great.
about anything to do with work. Get out in the bush. Yeah, watch out for
Doesn't get
snakes.
Yeah, watch out for snakes, particularly down here. So no, look, that's a great answer. And look, Darryl, I know we've got to let you go catch a flight. We've barely scratched the surface, particularly when you're throwing in Stevie Wonder anecdotes like that at the end. It's like, oh, I bet you've got another whole bunch of amazing ones. So hopefully we'll catch up again in future, but cannot thank you enough for taking the time. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about some of your wonderful career.
Mate, I'm amongst such amazing company. You've interviewed some of my heroes, so it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for having me.
So I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly got a huge buzz out of speaking with Darryl. I mean, what a career. And he's, as I said, he's still just in the middle of it. And I just love the insights into, the challenges, the logistical and the musical challenges of working in things such as TV shows like Australian Idol. And you can guarantee it to be very similar on American Idol and UK Idol and all those other parts of the franchise. So, yeah, what an amazing musician and guy, and we look forward to keeping in touch with Darryl. So, yeah, huge thanks to him for taking part, and obviously a huge thanks to all of you out there as always as well for listening. So a quick shout out to our gold and silver supporters, Tammy Catcher from Tammy's Musical Stew. Thank you so much, Tammy, as always, for your ongoing support. Musicplayer.com forums. The Keyboard Corner forum there is an absolute font of knowledge and advice and humour. So highly recommend that. And then Mike at midnightmastering.com for all your mixing and mastering needs. Mike has it covered. He's got, Mike, I don't think I'm being cruel here in saying at least 30 years experience in audio engineering and production, and it shows with the brilliant output that he provides. So yeah, cannot recommend that highly enough. And last but definitely not least, Brother Paul Brown from the Waterboys. We could not do it without you also, Brother Paul. And as I mentioned last episode, he's currently touring, I think it's Europe again, though that band never stops. So thank you again. We'll be back again in a week or two, where, as I said last episode, we're coming up towards episode 100, and we'll think you'll either be incredibly excited or incredibly underwhelmed, depending on who the guest is. Yeah, looking forward to that a great deal. But in the meantime, keep on playing and we'll talk soon.